It is superhero hype week here on the channel. Lots of fun things going on. My pal Nate has been relocated in order to help with this video. We are talking about Spider-Man from Insomniac Games on the PlayStation 4 and now the 5. What makes this game so special? Now, before we hop into it, there are a couple of things that I have to point out. First off, my fiance just started a new Etsy shop, Enchanted Glamour, which sells a wide variety of awesome things. Mother's Day is coming up. Don't you love your mom? If you do, you'll buy her a bracelet. I'm manipulating you for my own benefit, just like every other ad marketing agency does, except I will tell you that I am. If you love your mom, you'll buy from this store. If you don't, guess you hate her. Anyway, let's hop right into the video now, moving on, because hey, listen, this game is fantastic. There's a lot to talk about. Spider-Man for years has been getting video games. I mean, way back, way back. I mean, he's been getting games, even I believe he had one on like the Atari, like forever ago. It was horrible. And they've been improving slowly over time. There are some hidden gems in there that people don't talk about as much, like the PlayStation 1, Spider-Man 1 and 2. A couple of the Raimi, Tobey Maguire games are really good. And, you know, there's some in here too, like Web of Shadows, that's kind of, you know, a lot of people love, a lot of people hate. It was really up and down, though. I think Insomniac Spider-Man was one of the first games in a long time for Spider-Man that really pushed it back into the forefront and made people care again. Like right before this, what were we getting? You know, up and down in qualities, things like, you know, Web of Shadows, Edge of Time.
The Amazing Spider-Man.
The Amazing Spider-Man game and The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
And now finally, here we are, the Sony exclusive Spider-Man game. Nate, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I first of all, I love it. I think it's probably my favorite Spider-Man game I've ever played. Now, granted, I haven't played all of them, but I think what makes this so special for me is just it was able to push the boundaries of both web swinging and combat, which is not really anything that a lot of other Spider-Man games were able to do well. You know, a lot of them either had pretty good swinging, but kind of bad combat, or good combat but kind of bad swinging and bad open world traversing and whatnot. I think this one actually was able to do both excellent. It was able to figure out a way that the combat wasn't, you know, bricky and terrible and didn't run right and glitchy, but it was also able to make it an open world game that you were able to explore. It was full of events, full of stuff going on, full of people. And the web swinging was not terrible.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'm impressed by that because they went an entirely different direction than I think it was Beanox who made the Amazing Spider-Man games. They went a totally different direction with web swinging especially. And those games were almost knockoffs of the Arkham combat, like completely.
Yeah.
You can tell there's some stuff inspired by it, you know that? I mean, that combat system came out and it changed the way superhero games ran, just in general, right? I mean, before that, a lot of them were very mashy and all this stuff, but, you know, if you switch between these two games, there's a big difference, you know?
Yeah.
With The Amazing Spider-Man, if you were switching between Arkham City and The Amazing Spider-Man, it'd be pretty quick to catch on, because it was just like, oh, this is poor man's Arkham combat.
Right.
This does feel like its own thing.
But it seems like they advanced it a little bit.
Yeah, with all those gadgets and stuff. I will say too, sometimes those did make things easy. I think a lot of people talked about how they just avoided certain gadgets like the air suspension matrix and stuff that just kind of broke the game. But if you go into Miles Morales, for example, without, I mean, this isn't about that game, but just to, you know, that's an extension of the original and its own thing. They kept going, they took out some of those unbalanced things, gave Miles his own stuff. So obviously they're learning that lesson quickly, which is more than you can say for almost the entire history of Spider-Man games, which seem to take like one step forward, two steps back a lot of the time. I don't know, I just think that's fascinating. I also, by the way, you pointed this out to me before when we were talking about it, it's not just the gameplay that's amazing, it's also the respect for the character. Because you kind of pointed out to me last night when we were talking about this video and what we were going to say, they really do show a lot of respect for the source material, like, and a lot of allusions to different stuff. You know, there's respect to the movies, obviously, like some little nods here and there, and like some voice references and Easter eggs. There's like respect to the comic books with a lot of the source material, but also they're able to respect the spirit of Spider-Man while doing their own thing, you know?
Right.
Like the symbiote obviously looks different. If what we see, obvious spoilers here, I don't know why you're here if you haven't played this game, but if what we see at the ending with Harry and stuff is actually the symbiote, it's looking like there's going to be some different directions this goes than even the comics did. And Insomniac's done that before with some of their stuff too, with the original game. So it's interesting how they're able to do that without causing outcry among comics fans.
Right.
Because it always feels like Spider-Man.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty good point. You know, they do respect both the source material, but also provide a new experience. And they're able to do it well. And I think that was something a lot of people, both comic fans and non-comic fans, appreciated about the game, was that it felt like a new experience, but it also still felt like you were playing Spider-Man. It wasn't just something totally brand new. Mm-hmm. It both respected the old stuff, but also brought in new elements to it. So I think that was something that they did very well as well.
Well, and you and I are an example of that, actually. So, for example, you're a big Spider-Man movie fan.
Right.
And I'm not saying you like everything, but you found elements of enjoyment in everything. You really liked the Raimi movies. You really liked the first Amazing Spider-Man, despite some flaws. You enjoyed parts of Amazing Spider-Man.
I was wondering how you're going to describe that.
Well, like I believe, if I'm remembering right, you liked Green Goblin. Like you liked the way they went, despite the character design being bad.
Yeah. And I thought the character design was cool.
And you thought that the way they handled Gwen was good.
Yeah.
But like everything else you thought was overstuffed and everything, is what I'm saying in a lot of ways. But you also really like Tom Holland's portrayal. You know what I mean? So I'm saying you're someone who has enjoyed at least parts of every iteration of live action Spider-Man in modern day. I have less, but I loved the Raimi trilogy. I have very mixed feelings on Garfield, and I love Holland's portrayal. And I'm the only person on Twitter who likes Far From Home.
I also like it.
Everybody hates it. I don't really get it, but they do. But also, I was a hardcore comics fan of Spider-Man growing up. You know, I read like all of the Ultimate Spider-Man run, you know, the original. I like adored a lot of Amazing Spider-Man, especially around the time like in 2001 when they released Spider-Man the Black issue, which was like after 9/11.
Yeah,
it was like actually like a really dark thing, and they were really going in on the emotional aspects of Spider-Man and stuff. And there was all this weird stuff in the comics, right? And it's really divisive, but all this stuff, like sort of up to the point where Dan Slott took over Amazing. I didn't really like that. Loved his Superior run, and then didn't like it again. The point I'm getting at is we have different backgrounds of loving this character, right? But we still both love this game. Like, I don't care that it doesn't go the same direction as the comics.
Right.
I don't care at all. And you don't care that it doesn't go the same direction as the movies.
Yeah.
You don't care at all, because it's Spider-Man. It feels like it. And I hate the quote, like, feel like Batman or whatever, you know, like from the Arkham review. It makes you feel like Batman. It's become a meme, but this game, when you step into it, you are Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You know, you're Peter Parker, too. And I think that that's amazing.
Right.
Like, they handle the interpersonal aspects of Peter Parker's life really well, too. He volunteers at the same shelter Aunt May works at, Feast. You know, he goes around, he tries to take Miles Morales under his wing. Everybody feels very human in this game.
Yeah, I think that was probably an element that it did probably the best, was make you feel for not just Peter, but also make you feel for the other characters. And I thought they did a great job incorporating Miles Morales' story in this game. Mm-hmm. And then obviously he gets his own game, you know, later on, but this game was where he started out, and I thought they did a great job introducing his character, and I thought his story in the game was very well done. And that was something I also appreciate about the game, was that it didn't just feel like a Peter Parker game. Mm-hmm. You could tell it was obviously about Peter Parker, but they did a good job incorporating Miles and also Mary Jane too, even though some of her missions were kind of annoying, but you know, I thought she was a really cool addition to it. She wasn't annoying like I usually think she is.
I go back and forth.
That's just my own personal opinion. So, yeah, I thought that was probably the best element about it, was the story. And along with the story, the characters and their development.
Those characters are all interesting. Like, Doc Ock is really sympathetic, right? And you can tell why what happens, and it's sad, but he's not the Alfred Molina Doc Ock either.
Right.
From Spider-Man 2. It's totally different, but...
Yeah, this guy just wants to not be bald.
Yeah, that's his whole thing.
Exactly.
He just wants to get Rogaine, and Oscorp's hoarding it.
Exactly.
I get it, man. That disability's hard to live with. No, but also I do want to point out too, the fact that you started dying laughing made me die laughing. I was going to keep rolling with it. I do want to point out though too that the Miles Morales in this universe is an excellent example though of this point. Excellent, because one of the problems with him when he was introduced in the original comics by Brian Michael Bendis originally, right? He got a lot better. He was just Peter Parker with a different skin color.
Right.
And fewer faults.
Right.
That's literally it. Like, he was Peter Parker with a few more powers. He didn't really have as many of what's been dubbed the Parker luck, which is like, just a lot of bad things happening to him. And in some ways, he honestly felt a little Mary Sue-ish. Like the original Miles.
Yeah.
Later on in the comics, he became a lot better. And also, Into the Spider-Verse really improved him. And then this game came along, and you were not a fan of Miles originally before Spider-Verse in this game.
Right.
And I do think that that's something to point out, that like the comic stuff you had read and all these other representations of Miles you thought were okay at best and just kind of boring at worst. Not throwing you under the bus, because I actually agreed with you in a lot of those cases,
right.
up to the point where he was brought in the comics kind of into mainline with the Secret Wars. I thought he was kind of boring, but he started getting a lot better there, and that movie and this game changed your opinion completely on that character. I think that if you can go into a game or movie, right, and they write a character good enough that you didn't give a crap at all beforehand, but you walk away liking them, that shows that that's good storytelling.
Right. Yeah, and that's obviously something that happened. I didn't like Miles, and then I watched Spider-Verse first, and I really liked that movie, and they did a good job at that. But this game, like you said, did that well, was writing the story not just for Peter, but for Miles also. Was, they wrote a compelling story and made the character likable and made him, they made you feel for him as the player. And, that goes along with the rest of the story and the character development as well. So that was something that was pretty great, actually.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing about this game is it's like, the gameplay is fantastic, right?
Right.
And you can talk probably for a couple hours about the gameplay and how it improved from a lot of Spider-Man games. I understand there's going to be people who prefer, like Web of Shadows swinging and some stuff like this that might have some more weight to it, preferences. But when it comes to the story and the heart of the character, there's not much that they got wrong here at all. I can't think of much at all. I think there was a few missteps in the mid-quel Miles. I still love it, but a few missteps with kind of making the villain really same-ish to the previous one and some stuff like that. But overall, like, Insomniac totally knows what they're doing, and it's in good hands. I think that at the end of the day, what really makes Spider-Man different is that both the character, the story, the gameplay, and the player all walk away feeling respected.
Right.
You're not treated like a moron in terms of the story. You're not treated like a moron in terms of the gameplay where they hold your hand through everything, but it's also not so hard that it is not fun.
Yeah.
The characters are not treated poorly. Everybody in every aspect of it is treated with respect, and you can tell that the people at Insomniac, even if you disagree with them on something they do in the story or something they do with the gameplay, which we do have those things, you and me, maybe too many gadgets, unbalance the game, certain villains,
the same events,
or type of villain. Or, lack of variety, like you said, in random events, stuff like that. Even when you see those faults, because they do exist and it's okay to admit, you can tell they care.
Right.
And that's a little different than a lot of video games. There's a lot of video games where you see a fault and you can tell nobody cared about this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm playing Call of Duty Warzone, and there's like a fault in the design right now where they removed a feature that was really good. I don't want to get too far into this because it's COD. And you and I were both talking about it's like someone did not give a crap.
No,
someone
not at all.
just tried to make a quick fix, and they ripped part of the game out to try and make it better, and they just made it 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And Insomniac doesn't do that. Even when they make mistakes, you know that they really care about the property and the player, and I think that's awesome to see. Do we have anything else before we wrap it up, Nate?
I think one more thing I wanted to point out too was going along with how Insomniac cares was you can tell that by the costume choices too. For Spider-Man, there's some really like deep cuts in there in the costume. Like you can tell that they went into the comics and were like, what can we pull out of here? What, even if it's some really niche comic or something, you can tell that they actually did their research and time and put some effort into finding different skins for Peter, which is something I thought was kind of cool, because there's a lot of them that, like you said, I've never really read a lot of the Spider-Man comics, but there were some of them I had never even known existed. And then I saw them in there. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then it made me like look it up a little bit, see what that's from and whatnot. And I thought that was pretty cool. It's not too often game developers actually take the time to find like really random costumes from some character and put it into the game.
And not charge you.
Right.
Because the only ones that are locked behind a paywall at all, I think are very fair. Those are the ones with the DLCs.
Yes.
Like the City That Never Sleeps, the 3 DLCs in the season pass. There's a few costumes in each that are locked behind a wall. But other than that, so many of them have been free. And they were releasing free ones so late. Like, for example, when the PS5 remaster came out, they went back in and added the Amazing Spider-Man suit.
Yeah.
To the PS4 version.
Right.
Like, if that's not respecting the player with cosmetics and stuff, I don't know what is.
Right.
So, yeah, it's incredible how good of a job they do with this just overall. It's something that we probably could drone on about for an hour, especially on a week like this week. Superhero hype week. Echo. Week. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. But, I think we got to call it here. So thank you everybody for checking this out. We appreciate you very much. What makes Insomniac's Marvel Spider-Man special for you? Are there any things about this game that you would change or that you don't like? Or what's, the most special thing to you that really makes you go back and care about it? We appreciate you very much. Thanks for watching the video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more content like it. Lots of stuff coming up this week and into next week. Have a fantastic day. Everything's down in the description. The Etsy shop, me and my fiance now run. We have got Patreon. We have got a secondary YouTube channel, Degenerate Plays, where we play through all kinds of content, podcast style. It's all down there. See you in the next one. Stay shway.